happy to welcome Laura Baumbach to the podcast as part of the official 2016 GRL Blog Tour. Recognized in 2010 by Rolling Stone magazine as a pioneer of the MM romance genre, Laura is the multi-award-winning acclaimed author of short stories, novels, and screenplays. She's busy writing her newest novel, tentatively titled The Dark Side, a new series featuring ex-Special Forces turned security specialist Reese Holt. Laura devotes herself full-time to publishing and writing. She's the founder of the only RWA chapter for GLBT romance authors called the Rainbow Romance Writers. She is also the owner of Man Love Romance Press, commonly known as MLR Press, a small publishing house that specializes in gay erotic romance, mystery, and fiction. Thanks for being with us, Laura.
Well, thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. So how long have you been writing in this category of romance?
Well, actually, I've been writing probably a little over 15 years now. I kind of got into it from a roundabout way through slash fan fiction and doing some consulting on a script for some filmmakers, a B film, maybe C, in California, because I am an emergency trauma nurse as well, and I did some medical consulting on their script. Wrote some fan fiction to go along with the vampire film that they were making. And they came to me and asked if they could publish my collection of fan fiction when the film was released, which I was honored and thrilled and whatnot to have them do. And then it was such a hit and actually won an award, I can't believe that, for fan fiction outside of the fan fiction world. And the distributor came back and asked if they could convince me to write some original fiction, and my career was born.
Nice. That's very cool. We hear a lot, from authors who get their start in slash, and that's an amazing way to do it. Kind of authorized slash, if you will.
Yes, it was. Very much so, and it was a terrific way to learn how to write. I can remember I'd been writing a particular piece of fan fiction, a series, for quite some time, and I finally had someone write me and said, "Geez, who does your beta work for you?" And I wrote back and said, "Beta? What's a beta?" And she said, "I thought so." She actually turned out to be an editor of a newspaper in Washington, so she was really quite highly skilled, and she taught me a lot. And it was quite a learning experience, all of the fan fiction, which was great.
What are some of the key changes you've seen over 15 years? Because you certainly got some time in this genre.
Oh my gosh, the entire process is taken a complete turnaround. When I started officially writing original male erotic romance, it was impossible. And I do mean this in the word phrase, impossible to get anyone in the romance community to review it. I was denied. There were only a couple publishers who would actually, and these were ebook publishers, who would actually accept the stories, which they did of mine, and I had to beg, whine, and cry to have them put the books into print because you couldn't really qualify for anything within the official romance community unless you were in print at that time. And everybody was very, very reluctant. They kept saying there wasn't a big enough market, but they didn't understand that their market is not only a GBLT community that might want to read the books, but there is a huge community of straight women who enjoyed this particular category of romance, and it was a hard time to convince them that was occurring. So when I first started, talk about being the black sheep. I was dissed at conventions. I actually had all of my promotional material removed at one convention because it offended another guest at the hotel. It was an uphill battle with every single book that I wrote to get it to where it needed to be. So, and nowadays, people who write kind of expect people to fawn all over them and to give them reviews and to get their books right out where they need them to be. But they don't understand that those of us who started it 15 years ago had a huge struggle ahead of us. I'm pleased beyond words that it's no longer that difficult, that it's become an accepted genre within the romance community, the official romance community, as well as outside of that.
Mm-hmm. What can you tell us about your latest work, The Dark Side?
Well, I hadn't written for a number of years. After my last book, Mexican Heat, which came out, which I wrote co-wrote with another author, Josh Langdon. It did very well. It won us a whole room full of awards. Did its thing, but by then the press, MLR Press, had started taking off to a bigger degree, and I decided I needed to devote more attention to publishing other people's work and getting them out in print, getting them out there officially. That was the real reason I started the press, was that so we could get our category of romance into print so that it would be allowed to participate in some of the RWA contests and events and whatnot under a legitimate title. And I needed to devote more attention to that. So I hadn't written anything for quite some time. I wrote a short story last year only because my editor beat me, and we were doing a series, and two people had to fall out at the last minute, and so she needed a pitch hitter, and so she turned to me, and I broke down and I wrote a short story. And once I really got back into it, I realized how much I missed it. But I have to admit that I felt very unsure of getting back into it, how readers would receive it. Did I still have the ability to tell a decent story? It was a difficult decision to make, to sit down and start, especially since I consider this to be a new series, a whole new world, create a whole new universe. So to prepare myself, I actually broke down and I took the James Patterson Masterclass for writing thrillers. This is a romantic suspense novel, which is, pretty much the same vein. And that helped a whole lot. It helped build my confidence back up and let me realize that I still knew how to tell a good story. I still rely heavily on my editors to make me look like I could tell a good story. And it's gone a lot smoother than I expected it to. I was surprised to find myself feeling unsure after numerous stories, titles, books, novels, short stories, screenplays. But I did. I felt a little unsure, but I'm really glad that I got back to it.
Is the book out now, or does it have a date?
It does have a date. It will release at GRL just prior to it. It's coming out in October. As a matter of fact, I've got the last few scenes to write this week, and hopefully it's off to the editors soon. I want to have the book available for some early reviewing and whatnot before the release date in October. So, and the second book's already been plotted out, so that's a big achievement for my poor little disused brain to manage to organize yet. But I'm looking forward to it. I'm pretty excited about it.
Tell us a little bit about Reese Holt and the kind of adventures we'll expect there.
Well, actually, yeah, probably shouldn't say this out loud, but I was heavily influenced, inspired, I should say, by the TV show Person of Interest. I love their main character. I think that kind of a tough, seasoned, hurt hero is very endearing to me. And I kind of styled my guy a little bit based on that character. He was my inspiration. It has to come from someplace. So he really was the seed in my brain when I was creating this character. My mind kept going back to that character there, and I kind of fleshed it out, made it my own. Of course, that's what you have to do with your own person, because you put so much of your own personality and your own a piece of yourself goes into every character you create, and he wasn't any different. But I like the flawed hero. No one's perfect, and it's those flaws sometimes that not only make us interesting, but make us redeemable. And it was quite a lot of fun to create such an unemotional or restrained person, because I definitely am not that person. And after I started working on it, surprisingly enough, he just kind of took on a life of his own, and it doesn't even feel like I was creating him after a while. He just kind of blossomed into his own person as the story went on. So it fell into it quite naturally, and I was very pleased. It's one of the few characters that has evolved so quickly and so spontaneously on his own. I think it must be all that 7 years of not writing at all. It was kind of hiding in the back of my head and ready to explode and grow once I let him out of the cage there. And he's a very stalwart, loyal, but a closed personality. And he's got a bit of the white knight syndrome in him. And it's very important for him to help save every little piece of the world that he runs across. But he's a hard guy to get to know and love because he is pretty closed off. So it takes a special person to be able to tolerate that on a daily basis. And then that's where the secondary character, of course, comes in. And he also kind of grew organically and naturally. And his name is Alex Throne, excuse me. And he developed pretty easily, fell into that mold as someone who could tolerate and live with that other type of personality. It was a challenge at times to write a romance, an erotic romance, actually, with someone who is others maybe describe as emotionless, but really isn't. So that was kind of a challenge, and I was actually enjoying that. The subtleties of it, the small cues that they have to give, and the way the other person picks up on them. It was a very challenging and exciting, actually, interaction to write. I hope I pulled it off. We'll see.
Sounds like you went like full tilt for your return to the writing with the complex characters and everything. And
oh, I did. As a matter of fact, as I said, I was feeling very unsure of myself. I actually, for the first time in my life, since writing originally, I put a call out to a couple of my people and asked for someone to beta read for me. But I tried not to get anyone who liked my writing, but I did want them to. It was small short story. The first person who beta read for me said, "Geez, I knew you owned the press, but I didn't realize you were an author," which crushed my soul, of course. But nonetheless, and that was good though, because she didn't come in with any preconceived notions and expectations, nor did she really care whether or not I liked her opinion, which is exactly what I wanted and what I needed. And both of the betas who came in and volunteered to do it told me that it was an excellent story. So
great.
That kind of supported myself, because I've kept writing thinking, this is the first chapter. Should I continue or shouldn't I continue? Have I really lost it? And with that little bit of reassurance, I decided to dive into it. But I knew that I really had to make it the best it could be, not only for my readers who've been very, very, very loyal and waiting over these last few years for me to put out another book, but I also needed not to embarrass myself. And I wanted it to be the absolute best it could be, which is why I've gone to great pains to write and rewrite it and double check, and took the master's class so that I remembered all the high points and the things that I knew but I'd been rusty about using because I haven't been writing. And it was very important to me that this book come off and be a success. So it wasn't all that difficult to kind of give it its all. And I really, after 15 years, every time you write better than you wrote the time before. And your craft grows, and you know how to polish, and you know where to look, and you remember the fine points, and little by little, those were the things that I thought that I had lost. But I feel fairly confident that I have. They were just waiting in the back of my head for me to actually open the doors and let them back out again. So I'm pleased with it thus far, although I will be a nervous wreck when the first review comes in.
What are you looking forward to in Kansas City this year?
Reconnecting with fans. Kansas City is all about the fans being able to come and meet some of their authors. Writing is not a solitary process. The actual physical writing of the book is, yes, but everything else that is combined with writing is half the battle. The other half is marketing and letting people know it's out there, because you can have the best book in the world, but if no one realizes that it's there, it's of no use to anybody, including you. And so being able to have that moment where you can reconnect with the fans and other writers, although you can spend as much time as you want on email and this and that, it is never the same as face-to-face personal contact. Those times make a huge difference in in your social interaction and the way you view things. And it's your presentation while you're there. You know, it's important that your fans see you as the person that you are, or the person that you would like to present yourself to be to them. And it makes it far more memorable to a fan when they're reading a book. I know I myself personally, when I have met a famous person, they made a good impression. Let me add that. It suddenly somehow you seem closer to them, and you realize just how much you either do have in common with them or don't. And it can make a big difference on whether or not you continue to read their books or you continue to watch the movies that they're in and whatnot. So it's a very important time. And I'm looking forward to making that a success and hooking back up with people again that I haven't seen for a while.
Excellent. Now, what's the best way for people to keep up with you online?
There are a number of places. I am available on Facebook, which is basically facebook.com/laura.baumbach. You can also find my books at the press, which is www.mlrbooks.com. I have my own website, of course, which is www.laurabaumbach.com. And you can also find a link there on my website to join my newsletter to keep abreast of all my books and what's coming out next. I will have the second book in this series all planned out and ready to go as soon as I finish up with this one. Also, I will be writing the sequel to Mexican Heat, which has been promised for a number of years now, and is just sitting there all outlined and ready to go, and that will be my next project. So those two things, if you subscribe to my newsletter, you can keep up to date on how they're coming and when they'll be out. And pretty much, I'm not that much of a social maverick, busy with the business and whatnot, but I do try to keep in touch with people who care.
Great. Well, we'll link up to all those points in the show notes for this episode. Laura, we thank you so much for being with us.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed the moment, Jeff.